It's been an interesting 2.5 months for me. This after spending 35 years on campus, the conference office is just a little bit different for me. I told President Boren at lunch that one of the challenges has been being flopped in the middle of a new position and not really having the opportunity to define my own agenda. In coming in, we were right in the middle of the BCS and National Championship Series reconfiguration, right in the middle of the commencement of the Champions Bowl, and right in the middle of our own television negotiations. And in large measure, we still are right in the middle of all of those. And so the first 2.5 months have been the activities have been those of preparing to bring those three initiatives to closure and getting out to the campuses and anticipating the beginning of the football season. And so I'm happy that this weekend commences the last part of that process, and it'll be fun to once again get out on campus and see our football teams play, see our volleyball teams play, see our cross country teams run, and the like. It really is what we're all about. The rest of what we do is just positioning to try and be as successful as we can be in those other areas. I want to thank President Boren and Joe Castiglione for their hospitality while I've been here. I got here early this morning, spent some time meeting with the head coaches. What an impressive array of individuals comprise the head coaches here at the University of Oklahoma. President Boren has been very generous with his time today, and I appreciate it very much. I did take a little bit of a facilities tour, and I'm going to take an additional facilities tour when we get finished here. But I have to say that the most impressive building I've seen so far is the University Library. What an extraordinary renovation has been completed on that facility. The thought of having that beautiful reading room covered in paint is beyond me. But it is obvious to me that not only does this institution have a rich tradition academically and athletically, but they also celebrate that tradition and do it in every way you can athletically and every way you can academically and on campus. And the University of Oklahoma is an absolutely terrific member of the Big 12 Conference. We've had our share of challenges over the last couple of years, and I guess families always have those kinds of things, but it feels to me, and I think it feels to our members, that we are well positioned to move forward at this juncture, that we have some very good things on the horizon, and that the future of the Big 12 is just as President Boren described it. Stable, strong, forward-thinking, prepared to do what's necessary to support one another. And I am very excited to be involved and very excited to be leading the conference office staff, and very much looking forward to not only this season but many seasons to come. I think our future is very bright. So let me stop there, and I'd be happy to answer your questions.
Bob, how close are you guys to announcing the TV package?
Well,
does there continue to be a hold-up or hold-ups?
Well, as a context, let me answer your first question first. Yes, there are hold-ups. As a context, we have ESPN, Fox, and the conference as the three parties to this contract. We are also in the process of wordsmithing with 10 presidents, 10 general counsels, and 10 athletic directors, all who virtually have editorial veto power over the document. So at times, I have to admit that we've been a little bit of a dog chasing our tail. Should anybody be concerned about that? I would say no. These are complex documents. The long-form document will run something approaching 50 pages of dense legal. And so it's, as you know, we just released the first 3 weeks of selections with Fox and ESPN. We're moving forward, acting on the stipulations of the contract. We expect to be paid, and we expect to make our inventories available. But these are difficult documents to put together. And the fact that it's not just one television entity, but two meeting with the conference makes it all the more complex. So we have had some some legitimate disagreements as to how we thought things ought to fit together, but we don't have anything that's insurmountable, and it could be completed by the end of the day. It could be completed by the end of the week, but there isn't anything in the time frame that's going to cause us any problems in terms of moving forward or getting a deal.
What do you plan to do in terms of enhancing the reputation of the league? I mean, right or wrong, too many times it's based on how strong the football programs are, but the Big 12 was once right up here, and now in many people's minds it's down here with the middle tier.
Well, I don't consider us to be down in the middle tier. I think the top of our conference in every sport is competitive at the national level. I also think that the distance between the top of the league and the bottom of the league in most sports is relatively narrow. I think those are both good qualities. As you accurately noted, what enhances athletic reputation? Winning. And it isn't just winning conference championships, it's having our conference champion go on and win national championships. And so we're going to do that. We've had a rich tradition of it, and we're going to continue to do it. At the same time, we're going to do it just as President Boren described. We want to do it with young people that want to get an education. We don't want to create employee-employer relationships, because this is about having a great athletic experience within the context of higher education. And if that means somebody gets a chance to go on and play in the NBA or play in the NFL or win an Olympic gold medal, those are highly desirable byproducts of a high-quality athletic and academic experience. If we go beyond that relationship, that of a student-athlete, towards an employee-employer relationship, I think we've made a grievous error, and that's not what this is about. Do we want to compete at the very highest level nationally? Absolutely. We don't want the SEC to win another national championship. We think the University of Oklahoma can compete at that level and have a chance, and we think there are several others this year that can do similarly. And so I think the thing that makes a great conference is great competition every time you take the playing surface. And if you have that, supported by great fans and great officiating and teams comprised of student athletes, then you've got a lot to be excited about. I will suggest to you, to answer your question as directly as I can, I think the private reality of the strength of our conference is different than the public perception. I think what I found during the interview process is that the mutual commitment and the levels of commitment are much higher than the public perception right now. And I think as we go forward, we'll get the public reality and the private reality consistent with one another.
Bob, Barry Trammell with the Oklahoman. In your 2 months on the job, anything surprised you? You talked about being surprised in the interview process. Into the job, have you found out something about the Big 12 you didn't know?
Well, let it suffice to say there are a lot of questions I should have asked and didn't, either because we didn't have enough time or I didn't have the prescience to ask the question. But I don't know how different that is from any time you take a new job. I shouldn't have been surprised by this, but as I've made campus visits, it's extraordinary how devoted the staff and fans and student athletes of the member institutions are to their schools. It really is. I've lived it my entire life at Iowa and Northern Iowa, but in states where the state universities occupy as prominent a position as they do in the state of Oklahoma or Kansas, or places where there's not a lot of professional sports, if there's any at all. It's an important role. It's an important educational role. It's an important entertainment role. It's an important athletic role. And I don't know that I was surprised by it, but I'd forgotten just how front and center it was. And it's fun to be a part of that. I have really enjoyed it. The other thing I guess I'd say is a surprise is conference offices, generally speaking, are fairly quiet by compared to a campus where you've got students buzzing around and coaches popping into your office and that sort of thing. It's taken a little getting used to have a relatively more laid-back office environment. I haven't been there all that much, but when I've been there, it's got a different feel than campus, and I probably didn't have quite as much of a feel for that as I might have.
The Fox games that were announced last week, there was some speculation that maybe that was announced to kind of maybe speed along the ESPN part of it. Is that? Can you tell us the machinations of how that works, and maybe that's inaccurate or?
Well, it was actually ESPN that asked for it. The logistics are such that when they get a week and a half out from a game, there are just enough logistics that you have to get started on some of these things, and so it was really a very practical and pragmatic reason for having to announce those, and it had to do with logistics. There was really no politics between the two or among the three of us. It was just a matter of needing to get on down the path, and instead of releasing them 1 week at a time, we just thought it would allow us all to get down the path together, and so that's why we did it.
That practice has been an annoyance to a lot of fans in the Big 12, a lot of media obviously in the Big 12, and I'm sure a lot of people who come into the stadium and put things together, like you're talking about logistics. Is there an idea maybe to get that moving a little better?
Well, the whole concept of the 6-day, 12-day pick is, I think, what you're referring to. And, it's as simple as our television partners paying us a lot of money and wanting to make sure that they're putting on in the best time slots the very best matchups. And in the end, I think that's probably good for our fans too, at least for the viewing public, if not the live gate public. Our commitment is that we're going to try and do it just as early as we possibly can. To the extent that we can make selections early in the summer, we will. But I think today's reality is you're going to have some games on the 12-day pick list, and we hope they don't go to the 6-day pick list very often. And I think that's the way it usually works out. There's a TV schedule that comes out relatively early that gives you some lead time. There's some 12-day picks that are selected during the year, and on occasion we have some 6-day picks. And we're going to do everything we can to diminish both those numbers, but I think it's going to be impossible to eliminate them altogether.
The Fox wasn't an announcement, but the news that on their website for a few hours at least that they'd picked two games for Big Fox, 22nd and the 29th. Is that a sign that Big Fox is now going to be in the over-air business of broadcasting, and that the division we used to have, where ABC had the over-air rights, Fox had the cable, that's been sort of blended together?
That's correct. Yeah, it's a collaboration that actually was first initiated in the Pac-12 contract between Fox and ESPN, and ABC and several ESPN platforms, as well as Fox broadcast and Fox Sports will all be involved.
Is that one of the hang-ups? Is those two with getting the finalized contract, or is it all just each of those with the conference?
I wouldn't characterize it as a hang-up, Barry. It's complex. That's what we're dealing with, is the complexity of it.
I know you want to look forward and talk about the future, but there's some knuckleheads around here who don't appreciate what Chuck Ninus did. Thought he was old, crusty, couldn't figure it out. Could you just address that?
Well, he's not crusty, and he can figure it out. At 80, I don't think he considers himself old, but some might. Chuck had as much of a hand in saving this conference as any single individual. And in recognition of that, you may be aware we named the football coach of the year on an annual basis in his honor. That was really a way to appropriately recognize him and do it in a way that is going to keep his name alive in conjunction with the league for a long time. He put in yeoman's work. He approached it from a statesman-like perspective, and I think it's hard to overstate the impact he had on the conference over the last year.
We've got the granting of rights, I think, for 6 years. When when the television gets finalized, move to 13. Is that virtually a rubber stamp, or will that require some sitting around the table and
No, they're concurrent processes. Yeah, we're working on the grant of rights right along with the other, and we're very close on that too.
I would say that we expect that as has been said by the commissioner, things look very optimistic about the contract. Very optimistic about it. I think all the presidents are about it happening relatively soon. And I think once all those issues are clarified, and there are no real stumbling blocks. It's a matter of just fine-tuning the wording and some things like that. I think the grant of rights will fall in place almost automatically.
How do you balance the fact that Texas is big, strong, powerful, has money, but can't be seen as kind of a one-way or the highway type situation? Obviously, the previous commissioner kind of had that reputation, and other schools have left the league and dog-cussed Texas. Can you address that?
Well, Oklahoma's big, strong, talented, got lots of money too.
But they don't print it.
We wish.
Yeah. Well, it's. I don't think we're any different than any other conference. In the Big Ten, there was always the talk about the Big Two and the Little Eight with Ohio State and Michigan, and when Penn State joined, then it was the Big Three and the Little Eight. In the Pac-12 or the Pac-10 before that, it was always UCLA and USC and the Los Angeles market. There are some institutions that have some built-in advantages, and they also capitalize on those advantages. And I think Texas has done a terrific job. They've built an extraordinary athletics program. They've been very fortunate, and they've also been very good. But so has Oklahoma, and every school in our league has its strengths, and I think equal revenue sharing will help us. I think when I talk about the balance between the bottom of the league and the top of the league, I think you see that with. It was an unfortunate circumstance, but with Iowa State rising up and beating our conference champion last year, I mean that is emblematic of good balance. And it isn't all about money, but resources and the ability to invest in facilities and invest in coaches and invest in recruiting. Those things are all important. And the best conferences have knockdown, drag-out battles on their playing surfaces, and some of that is a result of having the resources and the tools that it takes to get that job done. And so, there's some have the benefit of geography, some recruiting is easier, some development is easier, but we all play with the cards we're dealt, and Texas has done a really good job, and so have a lot of others in our league.
Well, we'd be remiss if we didn't ask you about expansion, potential progress, or at least your thoughts on where it stands right now.
Well, I'm okay with you being remiss. I don't know that we have an imperative for expansion. I think at 10 members, we get that strength and stability and nimbleness that we want. And on the other hand, I would never foreclose on some sort of expansion. but I think it's the kind of issue that we're going to have to keep on our dashboard all the time. It isn't just the Big 12. I think every other conference is doing that as well. And that doesn't mean you go into a meeting and say, let's nominate so-and-so and yay or nay. I think it's just a matter from a strategic standpoint that you're constantly looking at the changing environment out there. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. I think intercollegiate athletics at the level that we're at would be very well served by a period of calm that included very little conference movement. I think some organizations have found that the larger number is not exactly the panacea that they thought it was. They have determined that the money is nice and the logistics are difficult. And so I don't have any preconceived notion that we're going to propose anybody for membership anytime soon. We're distributing as much money to our 10 members as any other league out there right now, and that's not including the Champions Bowl proceeds, so or the playoff proceeds. So I don't know what the reason would be that we would be urgently in need of consideration. Does that mean we're foreclosing on it? No, certainly not. It just means that we're going to keep it on our dashboard.
Are there schools that remain in contact with you for that possibility?
I have had regular contacts from a number of institutions, some legitimate, some not legitimate.
Is Notre Dame legitimate, and would you make an exception and be aggressive in trying to get them involved, especially in football?
To repeat, I have no problem with you being remiss. I can't talk about individual institutions, I'm sorry.
With Big 12 stabilized at 10, West Virginia, new member, is on an island geographically.
Yeah.
What steps can you take to sort of make West Virginia feel like more of a physical member of the league in terms of geography?
Well, we flew a banner over Morgantown that said the Big 12 loves West Virginia on the first day of classes. We were actually going to try and do it on the first day of July, but the plane broke down, and so we had to find another date. But is there a challenge? Sure. Yeah, there's a little bit of geography there, but I think in large measure we're talking about today electronic footprints, not geographic footprints. And is it logistically challenging for West Virginia? Sure, they got to travel this way a lot of times, and to a lesser extent, all of our institutions are going to travel that way. But they bring a lot to the table. It's not often that you can add two schools to your league and have both of them come in as conference champions, and they're good broad-based programs, and they compete nationally in a lot of sports, and so I think the advantages far outweigh any of the disadvantages.
Bob, you were in the Pac-12 at the time that they put together the joint network, and obviously it's not organized that way. You have several institutions building their own networks here. Just talk about if you have any preferences on how that works, or what kind of.
Well, I think it's. I've actually asked myself the same question, because it's the SEC had one model in terms of selling all their first and second tier rights just outright. The Big Ten, we had a different model with a partnership with a television entity and Fox and starting the network. In the Pac-12, we had yet another model, and it remains to be seen how that goes. All the Tier 2 stuff with the network. They started a national network and 6 regional networks. It's a big undertaking. It's as big as any television startup that any organization has done that's not in the TV business. And ours with a pass-through third-tier rights, there are Oklahoma has done a terrific job with putting together the Sooner Network, and of course the Longhorn Network is out there, and virtually every one of our schools has some model for activation on the third-tier rights. So all of them are new enough that I don't know that I'm prepared to say this one's the best model. I think they can all work, and to some extent it's going to take a while to work the kinks out. But I think the other thing is that there's nothing that says they won't evolve over time. I think any of those may look different 5 years from now than they do today, and I think that's one of the real challenges. And you asked the question earlier about what are the shortcomings, what are the things that actually are keeping us from getting a deal done. One of the things that we wrestled with a lot is how do you envision, and then if you can envision, how do you value unknown technologies? Because if the world changes as much in the next 5 years as it's changed in the last 5 years from a technology standpoint, we may be watching the Champions Bowl on the palm of our hand by the time 5 years come and go. So, that I think every one of those models is going to evolve over time, and I think ours will too.
Just one last question.
The last 2 years, the guys that have sat in your office have had one headache after another involving the Longhorn Network. Seems to have subsided a lot in the last several months. Have you had any issues regarding the Longhorn Network, either complaints from members, issues regarding any of the television? Is the Longhorn Network sort of gone from big headache to just something that we have in the league?
I think the Longhorn Network is a given. And we are going forward with that as a given, and we're going forward with what other people are doing on their third-tier rights to activate. Are they all painted with the same brush? No, not necessarily. But we're going forward to put our documents, our agreements in place, and that's just one of the things you work with. And so, are members complaining about it? No, we're just. In large measure, the group came to closure on certain aspects of how that was going to work prior to the time that I got here. I can't take any credit for that. I just think I think there's a tremendous spirit of cooperation, and it extends to our TV agreements, but it extends to a lot of other things we're doing too.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.